What's going on, everyone? And thank you for tuning in for the very first episode of my new YouTube channel, JB's Toys and Hobbies. Yes, I said new channel. If you're not familiar with me, I'm JB Trickle. I have another channel called JB Trickles RC. Logo's right here. And then you can also find that on YouTube by searching. If you're into RC cars and RC racing, please feel free to go check out my other channel. But this particular channel is something new and fresh. I'm doing this to get involved with my son's hobbies a little bit more. He's gotten into collecting. I've introduced him into some of the vintage toys because they don't make certain toys like they used to. We're getting into that, model building, painting, so on and so forth. That's what this channel is going to be about. So you're going to see some toy restorations, some model building, some 3D print model building, some dioramas, customizations, things of that nature. And this very first episode, of course, we are dealing with a Pokemon resin 3D printed model that my friend Chris printed for me. And I've been working on these for a little while to launch this channel with it. And you're going to get to see that entire process from a fresh printed model all the way to being done, painted, ready to go. But with all that said, guys, please consider liking, subscribing to the channel. Help me reach that first 1,000 subscriber milestone. I've got a lot more planned, a lot of content coming. But with that said, let's jump right into it. All right, let's jump right in. I want to give a shout out to my buddy Chris for 3D printing these for me. You will see on the channel in the future some things that I actually designed, I actually modeled in some 3D modeling software, and then my buddy 3D printed those files for me. But this particular episode, these are from an open source shared files. Somebody had already made these, so we just 3D printed them for my son. And as you can see, there's a couple imperfections, some voids in the 3D print, and we're going to need to fill those. For this particular instance, I am using the Testors modeling filler. There's several different brands. There's several different methods and things you can do, but I actually had this already, so this is what I decided to use. So I'm going to put some of that on a piece of paper beside my work area. I'm going to take that X-Acto knife, and we are going to start filling those voids. All right, we got that taken care of, and you can see we had to set them to the side and let them dry. There's a few voids on a few of these different figures, so you got to let them dry, and then we're going to come back through and start hitting them with some sandpaper next. I got some P400 grit sandpaper. This is like a wet dry sandpaper, but I'm not going to do anything wet with it. We're just going to go ahead, and I'm going to fold it over to a radius to help me get into some of those bends. In some of those smaller areas, and we're just going to smooth that the filler out in those areas and get it cleaned up real good. Here we go. Now it's pretty much good to go. We're going to get ready to start the priming process here shortly. I got some of these little miniature model little swivel handles. This helps me hold these smaller models during like the airbrushing process, which you'll see here shortly. But first, we've got to get everything primed up. Not using anything special. This is some off-the-shelf primer I got from a hardware store. I have used this spray primer in a can. I've used flat white paint, flat gray paint, flat black paint. It all depends on the color that I want to go with. So again, nothing special here, just some rattle can primer. All right, we're going to bring it back in, and we're going to get our little airbrush box set up here. It's going to help, just keep some of the overspray down. It's got a filtration and a vacuum system. It's pretty convenient and helpful. But we got everything primed up, ready to go. So the first thing I want to do is get my paint mixed up. This is some of the folk art paint. I think it's Walmart I've gotten this, or I've ordered off of Amazon in a bulk batch. Again, nothing special here. This is not any kind of special airbrush paint. This stuff is like, you can get it for less than $1 a bottle, or at least you used to. I'm not sure the current price. But it is acrylic based paint, so I can actually thin this with water. I wish I could give you a little bit more specific mixture, but this is the type of paint I've used on a lot of my figure models and resin models over the years. And I just kind of have it down to my own personal preference. I'll mix in some water, I look for the specific consistency that I want, and then I'm pretty much ready to spray. What I'm going to do here is just do a little bit of a test spray on some paper to make sure it's spraying the way I want and make any final air pressure adjustments that I may need. And then we're going to go ahead and get that figure mounted back on that little minifigure swivel base, hand base that I have here. Again, just to help simplify the process. What we're going to do here is the paint that I mixed up, it's a little bit darker orange. What we're doing first is we are going to be highlighting all the figures in the shaded areas that we need to do first to give it a little bit darker. And then whenever we come in with the normal base color, which is obviously going to be lighter in color, it's going to show through. It'll give a little bit of that natural shading in the darker areas and crevices and creases and so on and so forth. As far as my color options here, guys, it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be, I didn't pull color codes off of Pokemon characters or anything like that. I've got a visual reference page printed out. That's going to be what I'm kind of using to get the colors as close as I can. So if they're a little off, you don't have to flame me in the comment section or anything. But we're just going to get them as close as we can based off of visual reference. But now we have pretty much the darker orange shading done here. And then we're going to move on to the larger figure, and we're going to be getting the darker shade of orange, just like we did on the previous figure, just for the shading effect. We're going to go ahead and speed up the footage here. That way it's not, you're not going to have a several hour long video. Speed it up, and then that way you can see the process a little more quickly. And again, you're going to see some of the darker oranges through the lighter orange that we're actually going to paint the main figures with. But now we're going to move on, and we are going to do the darker red. This particular model here is going to be a different shade. It's going to be more red than orange, so we're going to start out with a darker color. Got to get my mixture right. You're going to, during my mixture process, I'm going to throw in the base, and then I may add a little bit of black or white if I need to darken it, lighten it. May add another color if I need to change the hue, so on and so forth. But just like previously, we're going to get them mounted on the swivel base, and we're going to start hitting those crevices and creases and everything to give it that darker shading in the areas that it needs. Figure actually ended up being a little bit bigger for that small swivel base. I probably could use a different material to hold it on, but I ended up just pulling it off. I had some more areas to grip it, but here you can see all three are pretty much done as far as like the darker color for the shading purposes. And so what we're going to do now is start mixing in some more paint and get ready for the base color. Got it mixed up, ready to go. So we're going to pour that in the airbrush, and we're going to start doing the actual base coat. The base coat is going to be the same on two of these figures, and then of course more of a red going on the medium-sized figure. Then you'll see how that comes together now. All right, you're going to start seeing that more orange, the base coat coming in on Charmander there, and just going to take our time and get that base coat on him all the way around. It may be hard. I'm not too sure how it's going to show up on video. I'm hoping some of the pictures I post and later on in the video you'll be able to see. But that darker orange is still going to show through and give that shading effect. And like those, you can see it in the video pretty good here, especially in the leg areas. So we got Charmander done there. And so we're going to go ahead and move on to Charizard, because I kept pretty much the same color for these two. Again, I've seen photos where the shade of orange on Charizard is actually a little bit lighter than Charmander. Some images, they look the same. It's hard to go with. So again, guys, it's not going to be absolute perfection when it comes to the color matching, but I'm going to get it as close as I can, and we'll do the best we can with what we got. All right. So we got Charmander and Charizard pretty much got the base coats done. So we're going to go ahead and move on to Charmeleon now. And again, this is going to be more of a red. As you can see, we used a darker reddish purple for the shading. But of course, we're going to be doing a little bit more of a vibrant red. It looks a little dark here, but I actually come back through and end up lightening it up a little bit later in the process. But we're going to go ahead and start laying that base coat on Charmeleon as well. All right, you're going to see here shortly a pretty good picture of them sitting side by side. And then it kind of shows off a little bit better, like the shading technique that I use where the darker colors are still showing through the lighter colors. Again, look especially in like the leg areas and some of the facial features. You can see how it's got that darker light look. There's other methods that you can use to accomplish this as well. And we'll go over that in some future videos. But unfortunately, right after I got done getting the base colors done, tragedy struck. As you can see here in this image, we had an accident and Charizard was destroyed. But thankfully, again, another shout out to my friend Chris. I told him what happened. I showed him this picture. We both had a good laugh about it, and he was kind enough to print me a new one. So we restart that process and then move forward. So with the unfortunate circumstances that occurred, I went ahead and repainted that Charizard to get ready for the next steps. We're not going to repeat that process, so we're going to jump right in. What I decided to do was a different technique of dry brushing the flames on their tail tips. So that's what we're going to do here on all three models. We're going to touch those the little fireballs on the tail, and we're going to get the base red. And then we're going to go on there and do add some orange and yellow. And I decided to do the brushing technique just to throw in a different technique for this particular video. I have airbrushed like fireballs and flames and stuff like that in the past. But again, just want to use a different technique for this go round. Finishing up with the red there, we're going to move in and start putting some of the orange on. What I'm going to do is get some of the orange on the tip of the brush and then wipe some of the excess off. Then I'm just going to go in and kind of brush that in several different places because I want some of the red to show through. And then of course we're going to add some yellow highlights as well. And I go back in and darken it up in a couple areas as well. I think I cover that, but we'll see here shortly. All right, now we're going to move on and go ahead and start the yellow. Pretty much the same technique here. Going to get some of the yellow on the brush, going to wipe off some of the excess, and then we're going to start putting some yellow on some of the high points. And what I mean by high points is the way it is printed, I'm not putting yellow in the crevices. I'm putting yellow on the top portion of the flames that are exposed. And you can kind of see the red, yellow, and orange going there. And then again, I'm going to come back in later with a little bit more red and do just a little bit of coverage to try to blend it. But the tail flames are done. Now we're going to go ahead and get the mouth portions of Charizard and Charmander painted. Using kind of a darkish red-brown for this part of the painting process. You can see that we're going to get that in there. Another technique that I use, since I'm using water-based acrylics, is I take a Q-tip and I will drop it in water slightly, and then if you have any paint excess come off an area you don't want, you can easily wipe it off. One thing that I did not show in this process is every time that I got done laying base coat or next layer coat, I would put a thin layer of clear coat on the models. This would allow me, whenever I start the next painting process, if I have an accident, if I drip paint or mess up something like that, I can use a little bit of water on a Q-tip and clean that off without worrying about the other acrylic coming off with it because it's already been sealed with some clear coat. So that's a fairly important step that I didn't really show in the video, but I figured it'd be worthwhile go ahead and explaining that to you as well. Here we're going to go ahead and get the tongues on Charizard and Charmander painted up, just using a standard red. Going to get it painted up, get the tongue kind of detailed, and we're going to do that on both of these as well. All right, with the tongues painted up, it's think it is time that we're going to go ahead and start putting on some of the tape and tape off for the belly portions. I didn't show the taping process. It's a boring process. Basically, I just taped off the areas that I wanted to do. I used some Tamiya vinyl paint masking so I could get the radius that I wanted for the stomach areas. And then I just used normal masking tape and some Ziploc bags that I cut up just to cover the model enough to where I wouldn't get overspray on it. So I didn't like fully encapsulate it, but just want to keep the overspray off the areas I don't want to paint. I go through and run my fingers across just to make sure everything's adhered to. And now I'm using that. It's kind of a yellowish orange. It's got more yellow in it for the stomach, the belly areas. You're going to see we're going to go ahead and start airbrushing that on Charmander now, and then we're going to do that to all 3 characters to get the belly areas done. Charmeleon there, because he was naturally a darker color than the others, he takes a couple more coats. I don't really show that in the video, but I do end up going back and putting another coat or 2 on him just to make sure I get the color that I want and it's not as dark as it is. But now, as you can see, the belly areas are done. And on Charizard, what I'm going to do, I didn't have to tape off the area. I wanted a little bit of overspray to have more of a blended area than a crisp line like I did on the belly. But here I'm coming in and painting those inside of the wings with that same color, that yellowish orange that I used on the bellies of all 3 figures as well. So we're going to get the inside of those wings painted up, and then we're going to be moving on to some white paint detail here shortly. And here we go. It's pretty much good to go. I was just cleaning off a little bit of an excess that I seen there. And as you can see here, they turned out pretty nice so far. We got the bellies and the wings, the fireballs on their tails, all that stuff painted up, and everything's looking really good. You can kind of see the highlights I did on the wing from the earlier paint process as well. So now we're pretty much going to move into some white detail work. We got to paint the teeth, the fingernails and toenails, and let's go ahead and get the base coat of white for the eyes. Charmander, since he's so small, the white actually comes in last, and you'll see what I'm talking about as we get a little further along here with this next process. But like I said, we're going to go ahead and get those teeth, nails, and the eyes of the other figures and get that paint where it needs to go. Same thing here, Charmeleon. We're going to get all the nails and stuff done as well, but we're going to go ahead and get that white detail in the eye that we need. Then we can come in and start focusing on the pupils and the blues and the blacks and all that stuff that you'll need to kind of get that eye look. And then we're going to, of course, add a little bit of white glare to bring a little bit of life to the figures. And you'll see a little bit more about what I mean by that here shortly once we move on to that process as well. Alright, here you can see Charmeleon's pretty much done. We got all the nails and the eyes. We got the white down where we need to get it. So now we're going to go ahead and move on to Charizard and get some of that going. Same thing here. We're going to get the eyes, get that base, the base white in the eyes in both places. The nails and so on. And this is one of those areas I mentioned earlier with the Q-tip. I actually had a couple accidents. As you can see, I'm doing a little bit of cleanup here again, and I messed up even further on the other side. So I actually ended up cleaning it up the best I could with the Q-tip, and I ended up going back in with a little bit of orange on the paintbrush. So if you're watching this and you're wanting to attempt something the same way, don't be afraid if you mess up. You can go back and fix it, so don't get discouraged. Keep moving forward. That's the key to these kind of projects. If you mess up, it can be fixed. Just keep moving forward. All right, here you can see. Now we got the white down. The nails and the eyes are done. They've sat long enough to dry. And now what I'm going to do is get some blue in. I didn't have as light of blue as I wanted, So again, don't be afraid to mix paints and get your colors the way you want them. I do that fairly often. I've had to mix a lot of these colors to get the tone that I'm actually looking for. But I'm pretty happy with this lighter blue that I come up with. I ended up mixing a little bit of white in it twice, but I got it where I wanted. So what we're going to do here with Charmander, I'm going to go ahead and put the blue on the lower portion of the eye. There's not as much white on his eye, at least not with the pictures that I saw. The white that he's going to come in with is more of the glare effect. And again, that's the portion that kind of brings some life to the characters. And you'll see more on that once we get to that point as well. But we're going to continue going through with all three characters again, getting the blue details in and where we want. And you know, we're getting near to completion here. The eyes are the last detail, and of course we're going to want to seal them with some clear, and you'll see that shortly. Again, I'm using a brushing technique here for the eyes. I have airbrushed eyes on previous figure models that I've done in the past too. So I'll probably change up techniques in different videos and show you different ways I do things. You know, I don't claim to be a professional by any means, but I've done several different ones. I've got my own personal preferences and techniques and way to do things, but I'll try to share all my methods on the various videos that's going to be coming up on the channel, because I can guarantee you one thing: these are not the last models, resin printed models that you're going to see me doing. All right, so from here we're pretty much with the blue details in the eyes, so you can already see in the pictures they're a little different, and I apologize for the lighting changing. This is the first video on this channel. This is the first time I've been doing these kind of model builds and painting for many years. First time filming it, first time starting my new YouTube channel with this stuff. So the channel and my filming style will grow. It'll adapt and grow, and the filming will get a little bit easier with each project, because I'm going to learn how, get the lighting better. So I just apologize for that. But from here you can see we've got basically the black pupil in, and on Charmander there, and we're going to come back in and add some white detailing later, but first we're going to get the black pupil in on the other two characters as well. As you can see, I've already actually got them done. I forgot about that part. I thought I was filming, but I was not, but it's okay. You don't want to have to watch me repeat the exact same process over and over again, I'm sure. So now we've actually got the white, and we're going to come in and do that little, I call it the eye flare, or eye highlights, or eye glare. But I'm going to come in and put a couple dots on each eye. And this is where I was talking about earlier. I feel like this is what brings some life to the character. It makes those eyes, it gives that little bit of a realistic glare, a little bit of a light glint that you would get in an eye. You see it in the cartoons, and so on and so forth, but it adds that little bit of extra detail that they need to kind of bring these to life. And I recommend too, if you're going to do a project like this, I highly recommend getting various types of paint brushes. You're going to want some wide, you're going to want some extremely fine tips for fine details. So you want to be very cautious of using something too big for an area that you need a small detail for. So keep that in mind. You can pick up paintbrush packs from your local hobby stores that have different size tips to help you get the job done. But here we pretty much got the eyes detailed. I'm going to try to bring them in. I'm not too sure how this is going to show on video, but I'm going to come in at the end of this whenever we wrap up this project. Not only am I going to give you a final reveal video format wise, but I'm also going to share some pictures, give you some good close-ups of all three characters together, as well as individual characters. So I'm having to clean off a little bit of that holding clay off the bottom there, but I come back and get all that off. I'm not going to show that on video to bore you, but just kind of showing off the final eye details. And all we have left now is, of course, the clear coating process. And I'm just using a normal spray clear coat. I don't really have a brand preference. I've used different ones over the years. I just go kind of lightly with it and get it coated. But here you can see they're all finished up. The clear coat process is done, and therefore this project is done. These are fully painted. My son is absolutely thrilled. He thinks they turned out really cool. I'm pretty happy with them as well. And just as I promised, I'm going to go ahead and show you a before. This is how the process started at the beginning of the video, as I'm sure you can recall. And then we're going to transition over, and I'm going to show you some pictures of the final details. Again, I'm thrilled with them too. Like I said, they're not perfect, but nothing I do is perfect. But I'm very happy with how it turned out, and my son is thrilled, and that's what's important to me. And again, these final pictures here really give that detail that I wanted to see. But again, guys, I greatly appreciate each and every one of you joining me for this adventure. I hope you stick around. Please consider liking and subscribing. Just one last thing too, there will be a follow-up video for this in the future at some point where we're actually going to build a display base as well. So again, please consider liking, subscribing, and I hope to see you guys on the next episode. Thank you so much.